All right, good morning. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 9:03 a.m. For the record, my name is Mark Velashin. I'm the Deputy Secretary of State for Elections here on behalf of Secretary of State Francisco Aguilar. And I'm joined today by my colleagues, Ms. Heather Hardy and Ms. Stacy Sunday from the Elections Division and Deputy Attorney General Emily Espinoza from the Office of the Attorney General. First and foremost, if you are interested in participating in this meeting, you can call 1-888-475-4499 and then provide the meeting ID number, which is 821-9227-4637. Again, that is 1-888-475-4499 with a meeting ID number of 821-9227-4637. When prompted for a participant ID, please press pound. Then press star or asterisk 9 to take your place in the queue. Agenda item 2. This is public comment on matters not on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes per person. If anybody is interested in providing public comment about a matter not on the agenda, please come forward and identify yourself for the record. We'll start here in Carson. Seeing nobody down in Las Vegas. Oh, good. Good morning, sir. Please come in and state your name for the record, and your 2 minutes will begin.
Yes, I just wanted to thank you very much. My name is Ed Euling. I wanted to thank you very much, Mark, for making available actual paper. Thank you. And keeping your promise to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Euling. Appreciate your attendance today as well, and for again holding us accountable and making sure that we're doing the right things. Very much appreciate that. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas for general public comment? Seeing nobody broadcasting, could you check the phones, please?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good morning. This is Oscar Williams, OSCARWILLIAMS. I want to follow up on a comment I made on the November 5th hearing regarding non-public information, personally identifiable information. And I sent you an email, Mr. Chair, this morning. You probably haven't had a chance to review it. The discussion here in the general part of the comment is appropriate, I believe, because I don't believe that the election procedures manual really defines personally identifiable information, or at least doesn't do so adequately. And so that's why I'm making my comments in this section. If you want me to withhold to election security or something, you're welcome to suggest that. Otherwise, I'm going to make some comments if that's all right with you, sir.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So there may be a little confusion over what is personally identifiable information. The Office of Management and Budget has produced a circular number A-130, Appendix 2, Responsibilities for Managing Personally Identifiable Information. And I thought this description was important for the discussion in general. This is point 2, Introduction. Quote, because there are many different types of information that can be used to distinguish or trace an individual's identity, the term PII is necessarily broad. To determine whether information is PII, the agency shall perform an assessment of the specific risk that an individual can be identified using the information with other information that is linked or linkable to the individual. In performing this assessment, it is important to recognize that information that is not PII can become PII whenever additional information becomes available in any medium and from any source to make it possible to identify an individual. That's important. Now, this document is about 7 pages. It's rather detailed. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I would like to maybe just jump to the overview and then to the conclusion, and then hopefully you'll have a chance to read it thoroughly later, but it goes into a number of sections. I'll outline it real fast. Overview. Identity theft and forgery go well beyond elections, sometimes utilizing high-tech methods, according to a recent report at TechSpot by Sky Jacobs. Quote, cybercriminals are using AI-driven bots to impersonate students, enroll in college courses, and divert financial aid, leaving real individuals with stolen identities and fraudulent debt. That's one of the many risks that we face when you have a signature exposed on a mail ballot envelope. Okay? The stakes are high. In 2022, the total of victim losses due to identity theft in Nevada amounted to over $127 million, according to the FBI's 2022 Internet Crime Report, page 26. I'll provide you the link. The U.S. Department of Justice warns with enough identifying information about an individual, a criminal can take over that individual's identity to conduct a wide range of crimes. For example, false application for loans and credit cards, fraudulent withdrawals from bank accounts, fraudulent use of telephone calling cards or online accounts, or obtaining other goods or privileges which the criminal might be denied if he were to use his real name. That's my overview. Let me jump to the conclusion here, and I'll let you guys go. Handwritten signatures are considered personal data and can be classified as personally identifiable information because they can uniquely identify an individual.
Mr. Williams, are you there? Broadcasting, I think we lost Mr. Williams. Are you able to get him back? Broadcasting, are you able to get Mr. Williams back on the call, please?
Mr. Williams,
here.
Mr. Woloshyn, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I apologize. Broadcasting, Mr. Williams, we lost you for about 20 seconds there. You were on the
I'm sorry,
second or
you're
third
right.
paragraph of the conclusion. Actually, I did find your email and I pulled it up, and I very much appreciate that. But, Mr. Williams, would you mind starting again on paragraph 3 of your conclusion, starting with in the context of financial services, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for, yes, of course. So just to finish the last sentence, signatures are recognized as a form of biometric data due to their unique, repeatable nature. In the context of financial services, the handwritten signature image is specifically considered sensitive PII because it can be used to access financial accounts or authenticate documents. Nevada is currently not in compliance with federal laws and EU guidance on its treatment of handwritten signatures and personal identifying information as a whole. Nevada used to cover the signature on a ballot return envelope with a privacy flap that sealed the envelope. The time is now to restore the design of ballot return envelopes and other election materials to protect signatures and PII. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you, Mr. Woloshyn, for holding these hearings. It's wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mark Woloshyn for the record. I again want to extend my appreciation. I found the email that you sent this morning. I did, in fact, forward the email along with the attachment over to my colleagues here at the hearing. And very much appreciate the analysis that you've conducted looking into PII and the use of signatures. As you well know, especially given the recent cyber attack that hit our state, the protection of our collective information, especially that can be used to do these things for consumer protection and otherwise, is of the highest concern to all of us. But we'll take this document, review it, and certainly incorporate what we can into the procedure manual as well as into future discussions about regulatory or even statutory changes. So I appreciate your time and effort today. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 698. Please press star 6 to unmute your phone. You may begin.
Good morning. My name is Ellen Gifford. For those of us who depend on the Nevada revised statutes for information, I'd like to address the following. Recently, I contacted the Nevada Legislative Council Bureau to ask when they would complete the revisions that resulted from the recent legislative session. I was told that it would be in the January to March 2026 timeframe. I have to say I was taken aback by their answer because Nevada's legislative sessions ended almost 5 months ago. I see this as ample time for having the updates completed. This is a problem for those of us who need the revised information for the work that we do. In fact, much of the content in the bills that were passed has already become law due to the effective dates in the bills. If a citizen were to have need for legal reasons to reference a law in Nellis, they could be misled by text that's not current. In addition, won't it be necessary for the Secretary of State to update their administrative code to support the new laws, notably in the case of election laws prior to the 2026 elections? It would be appreciated if this could be addressed, And additionally, it would be helpful to know when the Secretary of State is planning to conduct their hearings on the administrative code proposals over the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gifford. Mark Voloshin for the record. Again, two excellent points. One, I understand your frustration. I will tell you that, again, in the Elections Division, we're in a similar position. I do know that our colleagues in the Legislative Council Bureau are working as hard and as fast as they can with the resources that they have to make those updates. In the Elections Division, in order to try to help provide awareness of those bills that were passed during the last session, you may notice that, for example, on the elections calendar that we have published on the Secretary's website, we do include references. For example, you'll notice the timelines related to the distribution of sample ballots also include a reference beyond just NRS 293-565, but also cite Assembly Bill 148 from this last legislative session, specifically to your point, to remind citizens who are interested in reviewing and understanding the statutes that there have been changes, perhaps not yet codified into the statutes. In regards to the regulatory updates, I will tell you that's also ongoing. 293-247 requires us to complete that regulatory update prior to the last business day in February. That is also ongoing, though, and I can assure you that you will see the agendas for both the workshops and adoption hearings in the coming months. Again, there's been a lot going on. We've been hard at work preparing for the election cycle. That regulatory review, though, has not been forgotten. It is essentially after these meetings following relating to the procedure manual, the next big project that we will continue to move forward on to solicit public comment and feedback on. So I do assure you it will occur before the last business day in February, likely sometime in December, January, and in the beginning of February, before that last meeting of the Legislative Commission sometime in February. But excellent points, and thank you for your comments.
Chair, there are no other callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
Excellent. Thank you, Broadcasting. This time I will close public comment on matters not on the agenda, and we will move on to the Elections Procedure Manual. Before we begin, I'm going to explain a little bit about why we are here, and will provide the purpose of this series of 3 public meetings that started 2 days ago, continued yesterday, and concludes today. Following the 2020 election cycle, there was an exodus of election officials across our state. That occurred for a number of reasons that we will not go into today, but suffice to say that the increased rate of turnover led to the recognition that additional tools were needed to ensure that new election officials were able to be onboarded and trained in a more efficient manner. You may not have realized it, but elections administration is complicated and detailed. A new elections official must quickly gain mastery of 9 chapters of state law specific to elections, with numerous other chapters that must be referenced as well as our state constitution. Each of those 9 chapters of law has an associated chapter of regulation that must be applied. There are additionally numerous federal laws that must be understood, as well as our U.S. Constitution and its amendments. All of these together create a complex web of inalienable rights that must be followed to ensure that the U.S. citizens who make up the Nevada electorate are able to vote in a manner of their choosing in free and fair elections. The 2020 legislature considered this challenge and ultimately passed Senate Bill 54, which was signed by the governor and then codified into NRS 293.2502. It's a short statute, so I'll read it in its entirety now. NRS 293.2502, Elections Procedure Manual, Requirements, Submission to Legislative Commission. Subsection 1. At least once every 2 years, the Secretary of State shall prepare, maintain, and publish an Elections Procedure Manual to ensure correctness, impartiality, uniformity, and efficiency in the elections procedures of the state. Each county clerk and city clerk is required to comply with the procedures set forth in the most current version of the Elections Procedure Manual. Subsection 2. The Elections Procedure Manual required pursuant to Subsection 1 must include, without limitation, guidance and standards for administering an election that are consistent with the provisions of this title and any regulations adopted by the Secretary of State pursuant thereto. Subsection 3. The most recent version of the Elections Procedure Manual, prepared pursuant to Subsection 1, must be submitted by the Secretary of State to the Legislative Commission for approval not less frequently than every 4 years. The Secretary of State may make any change to the Elections Procedure Manual that is not substantively related to administering an election without the approval of the Legislative Commission. Subsection 4. Nothing in this section authorizes the Secretary of State to include any provision in the Elections Procedure Manual that amends or conflicts with any provision of state or federal law or regulations. There are two key parts of that statute that I'd like to highlight before we get started. First, the entire purpose of the Elections Procedure Manual is captured in the first subsection. Quote, to ensure correctness, impartiality, uniformity, and efficiency in the elections procedures of this state, end quote. That's the exact goal and direction we've been working towards as this procedure manual has developed over the last few years. Second, subsection 4 clarifies that the Elections Procedure Manual cannot amend or conflict with any provision of state or federal law or regulations. To clarify, our laws are created by our elected legislators and must be signed by the governor. Regulations must also follow a very specific process before ultimately being approved by the Legislative Commission, a body made up of 12 elected legislators. In other words, this procedure manual cannot conflict with either laws or regulations, but rather provides clarity on those laws and regulations. So here's how this will work today. In a minute, Ms. Hardy will read into the record a description of one chapter of the Elections Procedure Manual. We will then go to public comment so that you can provide feedback on that chapter. When we are done, we'll move to the next chapter, and the process will repeat itself until we are done. We have split the chapters of the Elections Procedure Manual into 3 days specifically to enable members of the public opportunities to provide feedback without sacrificing an entire day and to ensure that we are not rushed in the process. I want to remind everyone that our discussions today during this meeting will be focused on the proposed chapters of the Elections Procedure Manual listed in the agenda. We should not discuss changing our state laws, which of course are created by the legislature. This meeting series will not alter any existing laws. The Elections Procedure Manual cannot make something illegal that is otherwise legal, nor make something legal that is otherwise illegal. If there are general questions about elections procedures, we'll be able to discuss them today, as long as they relate generally to the proposed chapters of the Elections Procedure Manual. If there are questions that extend beyond the items on the agenda, I would be more than happy to set up a separate meeting at another time. To do so, please contact me at nvelect@sos.nv.gov. Finally, a few administrative notes. We will be taking notes while you are providing comments. If you see us looking down, it is because we are typing or writing. When we get to public comment, we will first take public comment here in Carson City, then in Las Vegas, and finally via Zoom. To be clear, this meeting is a discussion. If you ask a question, as long as it's related to the agenda item, generally, we will be able to answer it. Once we are complete here today, my team and I will discuss and analyze your suggestions, bringing them to the clerks for input if necessary, before ultimately making recommendations to the secretary. Finally, I understand that discussions about elections can get intense, and I am excited about talking with you today, but I must insist that everyone treat each other with dignity and respect. Your fellow Americans in this room and listening today may have different opinions, but they are worthy of your courtesy. Finally, before we get to the agenda, there is one last update, and I'll repeat this at the end, but just in case someone leaves early. We have identified that the Legislative Commission will be meeting in December, on December 17th at 1 p.m. That's the meeting of the legislators who we will present the Elections Procedure Manual to for ultimately their vote. Again, we'll talk through a little bit about how to get to that agenda, but if you look for on the legislative website, you can find the Legislative Commission and their agendas. And again, that meeting will be agendized for December 17th at 1 p.m. All right, at this time, I will now turn it over to Heather for a review of Chapter 6.
Thank you, Mark. Before I begin, I'd like to clarify for the record that our work on the Elections Procedure Manual is not complete, nor will it likely ever be complete. What you see online is our latest update, but work will continue over the next 2 years as we continue to find ways to improve it. The Elections Procedure Manual has 4 main audiences. The first consists of state election officials, which generally includes the members of the Secretary of State's Election Division. The second consists of county election officials, who have a number of unique statutory responsibilities separate from both state and city election officials. The third consists of city election officials, and the fourth consists of members of the public. Our goal is to establish the Elections Procedure Manual as the go-to document for anyone as an initial starting point for any questions about elections, voting, and registering to vote, candidate filing, petitions, and the many other elections-related topics. While we routinely get feedback from other election officials across the state, the part in the process that we're doing today is critical to ensuring that you, members of the public, can provide feedback on the manual so that we can continue to make it better so that it meets your needs. For example, one change has already been identified. On October 9th, Dominion Voting System was purchased and the name was changed to Liberty Vote. We will go through the procedure manual to reflect the name change prior to the submission to the Legislative Commission. Another more substantial recommendation that we've received will be applied to the next version of the procedure manual that will be published prior to the 2028 election cycle. Turning now to the elections procedure manual itself. Chapter 6 consists of election rules and responsibilities related directly to city clerks. This chapter is intended to be a quick reference guide and also to address many of the most common questions we receive that are specific to city clerks. Chapter 6 talks in general terms about roles and responsibilities, acting as an introduction to the statutes and regulations. As a reminder, this is just a plain language introduction and cannot conflict with statute or regulation. Chapter 6 includes information about the training requirements as an election official and the roles and responsibilities of city clerk during an election. Although not exhaustive, the 6th chapter provides an overview and aims to address some of the most frequent questions asked. Now, I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Thank you, Heather. At this time, we will go ahead and open public comment on Chapter 6, starting here in Carson City. Seeing no one, we will go to Las Vegas for public comment. Again, this is on Chapter 6 of the Procedure Manual.
Yes, my name is Ed Euling. I'm wondering if you can elucidate more about what the role of the city clerks are. In a general election, are there city clerks? Can they receive the petitions, for example? Are they working the same hours, or do they cease to exist? Do they register voters, for example? Or is that all done by the county? all done by the county? If you could clarify that. Then I think since we're talking about the manual and what's going to be presented as state law, I think there's a real problem with this date, the final date of when the registrations have to occur. It says that the third Friday of the month, but then it says 10 days. There's another law that says it has to occur 10 working days sooner. Well, on Friday, Clark County has different hours than the rest of the state. They don't work on Friday, and so when this problem occurred in the last election, I think since the state law says Friday, the county clerk should have been forced to accept the petitions or whatever has to be provided on Friday. They should have been open on Friday. Instead, the day before, they changed the date and said, no, it has to be done on Thursday. I think that violates, that's a clear violation of state law. And I'm wondering how you're going to handle that in the future. Also, there's a problem when you're talking about 10 days, 10 working days. 10 working days in Clark County is 2 weeks, which implies 2 weekends, and a weekend before the 10 days and a weekend after the 10 days. So we're really talking about, it turns the 10 working days actually turns into what, 18 days, 2 complete weeks plus the weekend on the beginning and the end. And so I'm wondering, can you provide any clarification about that? I'm sorry to be so ignorant about what the city clerks do, and what their functions are actually in general election.
Thank you for the comments, Mr. Euling. Mark Voloshin for the record. So I'll start by addressing the roles of our city clerks. I think that might be a good starting point. First and foremost, and I think the easiest way to summarize the city clerk's role as it relates to elections is that they're a critical partner in the election space, period, full stop. The city clerks, we do have 18 city clerks in our state. You're speaking from Clark County. So there are actually 5 city clerks in Clark County. Of course, Boulder City, Henderson, City of Las Vegas, City of North Las Vegas, and City of Mesquite. Those 5 individuals, again, elections is but a part of their day-to-day functions. They support their city constituencies in a great number of ways, similar to our county election officials. So let's start sequentially. City clerks, as our county clerks, they are filing officers. So during the filing periods in January and March of next year, where in the cases where there are city offices on the ballot, the individuals, the candidates who want to file for those city offices will go to the city offices of the city clerks for their filing of the appropriate paperwork and signing of the declarations of candidacy, those sorts of things. From that point forward, and truly even well before that, right, all this last year as well, city clerks have been intimately involved, as are the county clerks, with discussions on the preparations, discussions about observation, improvement to templates and documents. Because again, the city, in the same sense that county clerks know their counties better than any other county clerk does, right? Like the Carson City clerk, for example, knows Carson City better than any of the other 16 clerks know Carson City. It's very much the same way with the city clerks. The city clerks in the 18 cities, again, know their constituencies, understand the populations, the locations where people gather, the ideal locations for polling places. So again, that partnership is a very close one. During the conduct of the election year, they are, in addition to being filing officers, they are also the filing offices for city petitions. You mentioned petitions, so I want to explain this one. If there's a city petition that is specific to, for example, the city of Henderson, the city clerk is the officer that would receive that petition. If it's a county-wide office, then it goes to the registrar at the county level. And then if it's a state petition, of course, the filing office is with the Secretary of State. In addition to being a filing office for petitions, many of our city clerks across our great state also support polling places during an election, oftentimes at the city hall. The idea being that if it's a central location for city government, that it's a well-known location, again, obviously ADA compliant, those locations then become ideal for city polling places that are nested within the county as well. And then finally, at the end, and again, this is a very brief summary. If you haven't cracked open NRS 293C, which is the entire chapter of statute talking about city elections and the responsibilities of city clerks, I encourage you to do so. But ultimately, the canvas at the end of the election, by the 10th day after the election, the county clerks must conduct a canvass of the vote. City clerks must do the same. What does that look like? The city clerk will talk to the city council and discuss everything from challenges during the election to discussions about voter turnout and a number of other things as part of the city canvass that covers any city candidates and offices that were on the ballot. And then in addition to that, right, the interim periods, discussions about the legislature, providing feedback about the procedure manual, discussions about training, attendance with the training conference. Again, bottom line, as I started, city clerks are very much a key part of the team that provide free and fair elections to our state. I think that's probably the city portion that's most applicable. I'm trying to see if I missed anything. And again, forgive me, there's hours and hours I could talk on city clerk responsibilities, but I think that likely answers, from a general standpoint, your question.
Yeah, Ed Euling again. I think that's very, very useful. But the specific, for example, I ran for a statewide office. So why did I have to? I got my information. I applied. at the Secretary of State. Why wasn't the Secretary of State the one designated to receive the petitions? The Secretary of State works on Friday. Why weren't they instructed to accept those petitions? Why was the county, which doesn't work on Fridays, instructed and allowed to set the rules of how about all these other deadlines?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Ewing. Mark Voloshin for the record. That unfortunately goes to a different chapter of statute. We're not talking about the cities there. The short version is that the way signatures are verified in NRS 293, it specifically talks about signatures being turned in to the county election officials. Part of the reason that this chapter in the procedure manual was established specifically was to call out the fact that there are different responsibilities for state election officials. There are different responsibilities for county election officials and for city election officials. The county chapter, you'll notice, county clerks are responsible for maintaining voter rolls, period. The state, the cities, we do not have the legal authority to modify or change or touch or do anything with voter registration rolls. It's the county clerks that's their legal responsibility to do that. And while we can assist in different ways from both a technical standpoint and otherwise, ultimately the organization, the entity in our state laws that govern and provide for the maintenance of voter rolls, which includes signatures of voters, are the counties, which is why when a statewide petition, maybe a constitutional initiative or otherwise, when it comes time to turn in those signatures, they have to be turned into the counties, the county clerks, where they were collected, so that review can be conducted.
Okay, that's very helpful, and I apologize for being a little bit off the subject of today's topic. But why was the county clerk here in Las Vegas authorized to change state law and instead of receiving the petitions on Friday, they forced receiving them on Thursday?
Mr. Ewing, Mark Voloshin for the record. The last thing I'll be able to say, I think, about that is that each of our counties is governed by a board of county commissioners. Each of the cities has a city council. Across the 35 different counties and cities, ultimately the 18 cities and the 17 counties, the county commissioners are again, the ones who make those determinations about the business hours of their respective counties. It's my understanding that Clark County, again, as you said, works 4/10s, I believe is the way to describe it. 4 business days of 10 hours each to maximize the amount of time they can provide to constituents who otherwise start work at 8 and maybe go to 5, and that way there's a little time before and after. I believe there are other counties across our state. In fact, I know there's certainly at least a couple others that are in a similar position. Those are legal decisions by the boards of county commissioners that if you have questions about or recommendations to, the correct entity to address those is the county commissioners of those specific counties.
I'm more or less in tune with what the county commissioners do here. And as far as I know, the county commissioners never changed the date. That date is set by state law. It's hard for me to believe that a county commission can, even if you're correct in what you're saying, a county commission can come in and change state law. That's one thing. The other thing is why were they allowed to do that?
Mr. Ewing, thank you for the comments. Mark Voloshin for the record. Before my legal counsel stomps on my foot again, I do want to just clarify that the commissioners did not change state law. They don't have that authority. And the statutes are written in a way that talks about working days, as you cited, and other provisions based on the time periods. So again, it is in harmony. But as I mentioned yesterday, and I do need to kind of shift back to our discussion about Chapter 6, if you have questions or are interested in talking with the registrar about timelines for next year as it relates to the county work schedule or the delivery of signatures for a petition, I'm eager to help facilitate that if possible.
But we're talking, the date is very specific in state law. It's Friday. And it was changed. How can that happen?
Mr. Ewing, the deadline may have been Friday, but if it's similar, we have other deadlines. But if there's a holiday that falls on that date, there are other statutes that talk about how you adjust, either to the following business day or in some cases, it may be the day before. But again, we can talk about that with the county before next year. But I appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas interested in providing public comment on Chapter 6 of the Elections Procedure Manual? Seeing none, broadcasting, can we check the phones, please?
If you would like to provide public comment for Chapter 6, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Oscar Williams again. I have a question. I'm reading the page 2 here, roll. Briefly, it says the Nevada Legislature approved AB 50 in 2019, consolidating municipal elections on even-numbered years starting in 2022. As a result, city offices are now included on the same ballot as the governor and president of the United States during midterm and presidential election year cycles, instead of cities holding separate local elections in odd-number years. Can you provide me with the statutes and administrative codes that reflect that phrasing, please? Or you can email me if you want. You don't have it, but you're like the master of statutes. So, you have actual statutes that memorialize that? Because I have a second question to after that.
Thank you for the question and the comment, Mr. Williams. If you give me just one moment, I'll be able to pull up the statutory references. We will also we'll follow up with an email for these as well. But one moment, please.
You want me to go on to my next concern here?
If you may, just 1 second, I want to make sure I get this to you, and I want to be able to hear your next comment too. It does look like I pulled up. Yes, sir. I pulled up Mark Vlashon for the record. I pulled up AB 50. I went to Nellis. I went to the 2019 session. I searched under the legislation for AB 50, Assembly Bill 50. I pulled up the text as enrolled. In the text of that bill, it does appear that scrolling down through the different sections, there's a number of chapters and statutes that were amended. And honestly, it may be easier for me to email these to you because it is across 293, 293B, 293C.
That's an adequate response. That's a great response. I appreciate it very much.
Yes, sir. You'll see the email here momentarily. But please go to you said you have a second part?
Yeah, well, it's related. I'm a little confused how the change in local election timing doesn't violate Article 4, Section 20 of the Constitution. Listen, the language is very clear here. Quote, the legislature shall not pass local or special laws in any of the following enumerated cases. That is to say, regulating county and township elections. There's a state law regulating local and township elections that is specifically prohibited by the enumerated cases under Article 4, Section 20. So I'm surprised it's gotten this far. The county does not stand up for its rights. But I thought I'd just, can you tell me how it doesn't violate Article 4, Section 20? Do you have an opinion you could offer me, sir?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Williams. I don't have an answer for you on that one. Again, I can go back and we can review the legislative history of Assembly Bill 50 from the 2019 session. I suspect that may have come up in some discussions. I will try to see if I can find a video or transcript that otherwise addresses your question, but I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you right now.
That's fine. And I could do a little more homework too. I apologize for not having my homework done on that particular point. That's all my comments or concerns regarding Section 6 of the EPM. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Caller, you are unmuted and may begin.
Good morning, Mark and Commission. This is Luann Holmes, City Clerk for the City of Las Vegas. I would like to start off by saying again, really well done. The chapter on City Clerks looks spot on. I think that you've covered everything very thoroughly, and I really do appreciate this effort. It is fantastic to have all this information in one place and easy to use. So again, thank you. I would like to point out on page 5, not all city clerks do virtual candidate filings or Zoom candidate filings. So you might want to maybe put an emphasis on that. There are virtual meetings held by some clerks, but other clerks prefer in-person candidate filing meetings. Other than that, again, great job, and thank you so much for all the hard work.
Thank you, Luann. Mark Voloshin for the record. Excellent flag. We'll make sure that we amend that appropriately, and we'll likely include a comment about contacting the city clerk just for clarification. So that way, I was thinking about putting a list based on your comments, but it may just be better that depending on options, that again, bottom line is if they reach out to the appropriate city, they can find out in real time if something changes one way or the other going forward. But very much appreciate your comments and your input across the chapter and the entire procedure manual for that matter. Thank you.
Chair, there are no other callers wishing to provide public comment for Chapter 6 at this time.
Excellent. Thank you, broadcasting. At this time, we'll close public comment on Chapter 6, and I'll turn it back over to Heather for a review of Chapter 7.
Thank you, Mark. Chapter 7 provides general information related to election security, providing an overview of the state's process. Chapter 7 talks in general terms about roles and responsibilities, acting as an introduction to the statutes and regulations. As a reminder, this is just a plain language introduction and cannot conflict with statute or regulation. This chapter also includes information about the physical security of voting facilities, the testing, certification, chain of custody of Nevada's election systems, cyber threats and defenses, incident response plans, and investigations of election laws. While not comprehensive, this chapter is intended as an overview and is set up to answer some of the most common questions that we receive. Now I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Thank you, Heather. At this time, we'll open public comment here in Carson City on Chapter 7. Seeing no one, we'll go to Las Vegas. Again, public comment on Chapter 7 of the Elections Procedure Manual. Seeing none. Broadcasting, can we check the phone line, please?
If you would like to provide public comment for Chapter 7, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Oscar Williams again. Couple of concerns. In August, I requested of the Secretary of State through an information request letters of approval for the Blue Crest sorter and automated signature verification. At some point, this sensitive piece of election infrastructure, the sorter and the software, has to go through an approval process, and there should be letters of approval. I'm surprised that I haven't received them by now, it being November. I hope that you can provide those. Do you have them? Letters of approval to use Blue Crest sorter and ASV.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Williams. Mark Voloshin for the record. I don't have that information or the request in front of me now, but I will follow up with our public information officer to see if we can get some details on the nature of that request. To hopefully satisfy it sooner than not.
Okay. All right. Very well. I sent a proposal to Washoe County back at the end of August. I believe I had an extra copy for the rest of our voters, possibly forwarded it to you or to the Secretary regarding, it was basically a request for paper ballots for Washoe County for 2026. And in that, I decried automated signature verification for a number of reasons, citing, I think, 6 different legal problems, including its connectivity. Are you aware of that document?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Williams. Mark Velosh for the record. Truth be told, and you could come down to Carson today, your document is on my desk. I will be honest, I have been reading through it. I have a highlighter next to it so that I can ask. There's a number of questions that I wanted to follow up with you about it. And I will simply say that, again, I have been extremely impressed by the level of effort, the research that you put into it. And I'm hoping to have a conversation with you about that when I am done reading it. But yes, sir, I talked to Registrar McDonald about it. He got a copy also, and the copy that you did send to the secretary that was provided to me for review. Again, I have been working through it slower than I would have liked, again, but it's important that I take my time and make sure that I put some thought into it. But I am aware of the document, sir. I am reading it, and upon my finish of reading it, I will be in touch.
Well, that's gracious of you. I'm impressed and honored in some ways. So thank you, and I look forward to further discussions on the merits or lack thereof of the points that I make. There are some problems there, and certainly when we get to continuity of operations, when the power goes out, I don't believe the county is adequately prepared. In short, the more we rely on technology to run our elections, the more vulnerable we become to malware, cyber attack, power loss. We have paper and pen, and you hand mark your ballots. The power goes out, you put up a battery-powered lighting kit, and the election goes on. Anything short of that is an added vulnerability, a foreseeable risk that can be avoided through simpler methods, including having more precinct locations, voting locations. My other point was, I don't believe it's in here, but there was a lot of cell phones allowed in and around the central counting facility in Washoe County in the 2024 general. And each of those phones, and as I mentioned in that proposal, has the potential to bypass. You can set up your phone to be a hotspot, right? It can be a relay to the internet, but anything that's got a Wi-Fi chip or even a Bluetooth maybe can piggyback to the internet through somebody's cell phone. We have dozens of unregulated or unsupervised cell phones in and around the counting facility. It's an innate security risk. What protections are there in this document regarding the restrictions on cell phones in and around central county facilities? That's my question, sir.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Williams. Mark Velosh for the record. So I will just remind you that this procedure manual cannot modify, change, or add to regulatory prohibitions on things like cell phones or what's already existing in statute, really just to try to clarify it as much as possible. But that being said, I also want to reassure you that since the statewide cyber attack, IT teams, county leadership, state leadership, governor's technology office, even non-IT specific positions across the state. I will tell you from personal experience, we have collectively, renewed our commitment to cybersecurity, to assessing vulnerabilities, and then to identifying means to mitigate that. Does it look differently across our counties based on resources? Absolutely. But is it something that in Washoe County, the registrar and the leadership in Washoe County are taking very, very seriously? 100%. You spoke to the idea of reliance on technology and power outages when it relates to tabulation, for example, and things like that. A critical discussion that we have already begun months ago, specifically relating to that, and discussions about generator contracts, continuity of operations, what happens when if there's a polling place at Incline, part of Washoe, if the power goes down in November because of a snowstorm, or in some of the eastern and northern parts of Washoe, if there's a fire during the summer June primary, how do we work around these sorts of contingencies? These are things that I know the registrar and his team, again, have really seized onto as wanting to identify, discuss, and work through well in advance. Specific to cell phones, again, in central count, I will say again that the discussions are ongoing, trying to find the balance between making sure that the appropriate leadership on the elections department team is able to be accessible and communicated with, so that if something goes on elsewhere in the county, that the registrar, a polling location manager, or otherwise can contact that next level, that next echelon of leadership to address those concerns. Continues to be a discussion balancing accessibility and security. But to your point, sir, I think, again, the key is that we are not accepting the status quo as being acceptable. We continue to look for ways to improve it. We also are not assuming that things that were secure or safe once upon a time, 5-10 years ago, are going to continue to be secure in the future, and want to make sure that both from a perception standpoint as well as a cybersecurity standpoint, we are exhausting our efforts and continuously saying, what about the environment has changed that we need to adapt to ensure free and fair elections. So I can assure you those conversations will be ongoing through this year, well into next, and then even beyond into 26 in preparation for the 28 election cycle.
Oscar Williams again. Well, thank you, Mr. Berlash, I appreciate those platitudes. Although I refer back to my proposal, there's just a sort of a safe, secure, cost-effective, rather transparent way to conduct elections that relies less on technology. And I'll just leave that at that. I guess one last question, and this relates to that author, a guy named Ralph Pizzullo, came out with a book recently called Stolen Elections. And part of it, if I understand, I haven't had a chance to read it, but it involves something called zero tunnel technology. Have you heard that term, zero tunnel? The way to bypass the firewall and to connect to the Verizon backbone so that entities in Venezuela, Serbia, Canada, United States, third parties can have a backdoor to our election system. No less. Now, that's not my words. Ralph Pizzullo's. It's rather compelling, I understand. I'm going to try to read it. I think we should all pay attention to what Mr. Pizzullo has to say there, because when you talk about what you just said, I think it needs to be a part of the discussion. Really important. Zero tunnel. We'll talk about it some more. We don't have to answer it now, but keep it in the back of your mind. Okay, sir? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and I appreciate you flagging that. I'm familiar with Mr. John Fund's book, Stealing Elections, and he wrote a series of books trying to identify some vulnerabilities. His were back in 2009. I will look into the gentleman who you mentioned and try to get a copy of his book so that we can make sure that we are privy to his concerns as well. But thank you for flagging that.
And thank you very much.
Chair, there are no other callers wishing to provide public comment for Chapter 7 at this time.
Excellent. Thank you, Broadcasting. At this time, I'll close public comment on Chapter 7, and I will turn it back over to Heather for a review of Appendix A.
Thanks, Mark. Appendix A in the Elections Procedure Manual provides a quick reference guide for the 2026 election cycle. As a reminder, this is a plain language introduction and cannot conflict with statute or regulation. Appendix A includes information about state and federal incumbents, dates for each election, candidate filing, and campaign finance reporting. Political parties and federal and state offices on the 2026 ballots as well. The 2026 election calendar, filing and signature deadlines for petitions, election forms, and county and city clerk contact information. While not comprehensive, Appendix A is intended as an overview and is set up to answer some of the most common questions we receive. Now I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Thank you, Heather. At this time, I'll open up public comment here in Carson City on Appendix A. Seeing none, we'll go to Las Vegas for public comment on Appendix A. Seeing none, Broadcasting, can you please check the phones?
If you would like to provide public comment for Appendix A, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Hello, excuse me. Hello, Oscar Williams. I don't know if I'm accurate here on this section, but my concern stems from the sample ballot from the 2024 general. There was a drastic change in form of the sample ballot and the pamphlet that it's attached to. And I don't know where any of this would explain, that memorializes the sample ballot as I understand it to be. For example, and I don't know if I'm in the right section for this. So if you want me to hold to the general comment or something, I can certainly do that. But what I experienced was, or historically, you get a sample ballot booklet, and inside there is a mock ballot. It has the same size and weight and data as a real ballot. It just says sample as a watermark. It has your accurate races related to you, and the idea is that you can detach it, you can mark it up and bring it in, and then use that as a reference when you're casting your vote. It helps speed up the process, and that's why we do it that way. But that wasn't the sample ballot that was delivered last year. It didn't have a detachable mock ballot. It had just regular pages that had some sort of a generic thing that had no relationship to the actual races that I would be voting on. I'm entitled to an accurate sample ballot for the reasons I just explained. So timeliness and knowledge, and so somewhere that needs to be defined in the election procedures manual. We need to be clear that sample ballot is a mock ballot. There's sample on it, and you can detach it, mark it up. Not the whatever change that you want to describe. As I explained it from the last experience, and it seemed to be some unilateral change. I don't know where that came from, but it was not here. Historically, what I've known to be the sample ballot, and certainly there needs to be clear language on that very point. What do you think about that? Do you have a sample ballot detachable, looks like a real ballot, but there's sample, or not? I guess that's the question. And where is that memorialized in the EPM?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Williams. Mark Voloshin for the record. So when talking about sample ballots, it's actually codified in statute what the requirements are. Initially in NRS 293 565. From there are additional regulations, as I recall. Let me pull those up. Right, in NAC 293, down in 293.120, 130, 132, and 135. Those regulations talk a little bit about the specifics relating to certain elections, as well as the emission of notice of availability of a ballot in large type. So they're kind of, again, the regulatory element to the sample ballots. I think, and again, to address your point about the utility and purpose of sample ballots, again, outside of the statutory construct, the intent is, as you said, to provide information to the electorate about who will be on their ballots. There's also, again, very specific provisions that talk about other information that must be in there, including but not limited to, how to make a correction, for example, on your ballot, and things along those lines. Locations of polling places as well is an important one. I think, though, ultimately, again, this gets into an area that falls to each county election official who develops sample ballots and who knows their electorate the best as to how to best provide a sample ballot that meets the needs of their constituents. I think, again, and when you look at the sample ballots, and again, it's super fascinating, at least to me, when you look across the 17 counties, they are different in style for primaries and for general. There are different ways to answer the requirements of the statute. And I guess bottom line is that I'll take your consideration back. I know that the clerks and registrars are discussing sample ballots even now as we speak in preparation for next year, and we'll make sure that they're aware of your concerns. But I also know that the registrar and his team in Washoe, again, will look critically and have already started. I know this for a fact, at the sample ballots that have been issued in Washoe County before, identifying what could be improved, what should be retained, and those sorts of things, again, with the goal of constant improvement. But I appreciate your feedback and certainly invite you to provide that to the registrar in Washoe as well.
Well, I appreciate that. It just seems like the election procedures manual is the right place to give clarification on this issue of what is the insert of that actually constitutes your sample ballot. Is it going to be an official cardstock, looks just like a real ballot, it's got the real information on it that you need, or not? And I think that needs to be clear so we don't have the mess that we just had. I'm entitled to accurate information on the statute. It was not accurate. There you go.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Washington,
Yes, sir. Thank you for your comments, and I do agree. You are entitled to an accurate. That actually is I'm sure you're well aware, is a constitutional right, right under Article 2 of the Nevada Constitution, Section 1A, Sub 7, I believe, talks about the right to an accurate sample ballot. So yes, sir. It's a very important document indeed, and one that we take very seriously. So. I will clarify and talk to the clerks. Again, typically, though, the sample ballot is not supposed to be a substitute for an actual ballot in regards to like the quality of the paper, the card stock, but really is instead more intended as an informational document, which is why you'll see some that are, booklets, others more of a pamphlet sort of thing. And again, goes back to my comment about how there's different styles.
I understand, but in there is the actual sample ballot itself, and what constitutes that. There seems to have been a change that did not have the various races that were pertinent to me, and that's historically been the case. So something changed, and so it brings me to this point for the election procedures manual to possibly address that. I don't think the counties should just willy-nilly make it up in terms of the form of the actual detachable ballot. Is it detachable thingy or not? I mean, it was the new change did not have a detachable ballot. I mean, the whole point, as I said, my historical experience is you can take that thing out, you mark it up, you take it into the polling location, and you use that as your reference. That's what's cool, but that wasn't possible with the change in design, and something was really lost at that point. Now, I know we've had some problems with the register of voters here in Washoe County. The manager resigned recently. I mean, there's a lot of shakeup going on here, and there's some other issues in the county that need to be addressed, I think, so the elections department can function more efficiently. Possibly I can address those issues in general comment. I'm going to let you go, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for your discussion on these points. You are fantastic, and your staff. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Appreciate your involvement today and over the last few days as well.
Chair, there are no other callers wishing to provide public comment for Appendix A.
Excellent. Thank you, Broadcasting. At this time, I will close public comment on Appendix A, and we will move to public comment on matters other than the Elections Procedure Manual. This is Agenda Item 10 this morning. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes per person. If anybody is interested in providing public comment on a matter other than is on the agenda, in other words, not on the Elections Procedure Manual. Here in Carson, seeing none. In Las Vegas...
Yes, my name is Ed Yulin. Is this the final comment that one can make?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Once again, I'll go back to what I stated from the beginning. We have all rules, but they for free and fair elections, as you constantly say. But if the people in charge of those have intent for something different, they will do it, and they did do it in the last election. Your office, the Secretary of State office, weaponized the petitions against the potential candidates who were nonpartisan. Nonpartisans are required to gather signatures, or members of parties that aren't authorized by the state are required to gather signatures. Those procedures were weaponized against the candidates, and all the talking, all the regulations, all this is really not has limited use as far as there's that sort of intent within the government to do that. And that certainly happened. And well, I'll give you an example. We were required to gather signatures of voters. You changed the rules that those voters had to match the addresses of those voters had to match the addresses where the person lived, where the person registered originally. even though the signature was accurate, everything was fine. The the person moved, and in my case, moved from one part of my district to another part of my district, and those votes were eliminated. Those petitions were eliminated, or those signatures were eliminated, even though they conform totally to the requirements of the state that they be legal voters in the state. And even the county clerk here in Las Vegas, here in Clark County, acknowledged that they proved that they were voters. They were legitimate voters. They had just moved during the 4 years that people move around, and then you have, and then there's this other problem of that you refuse to deal with, even though the legislature is going to meet next week, and you could get an item into the legislature stating that whereas the state law provides Friday, the third Friday of the month, reduced by 10 working days to the first Friday of the month, that here in Clark County, that the county clerk has the right to override that. They're not required to pay overtime to people to come in on that Friday. That's too much. I don't know how much overtime they pay for other things, but every 4 years they can't be required, or every 2 years they can't be required to hire overtime people to come in. So what you're in essence saying is the state has this law, very clear Friday, and that the county clerk can change that. You should that should be written into the manual, and you have the chance to do it. Just hand it to the legislature's meeting next week to have them create this new regulation that you have declared as valid. That the county clerk can overrule that provision. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Ewing. Mark Flash, for the record, I do want to just clarify that the regulation that talks about discrepancies in address on certain petitions is NAC 293.185, originally created in 2007, last amended in 2011. And that was the specific requirement. And then the one other thing I want to clarify is that I'm not an expert on the special session process, I will admit. I still have a lot to learn in that regard, but I want to clarify that I don't get asked what the special session should be about, nor do I believe that myself, my team, and I don't even know if the Secretary of State himself does, has any input as to that agenda. The special session process, again, I will learn more, and if you have questions on that, I will certainly be able to provide that to you later, as well as if you have questions on the independent candidate for partisan office petition process. Again, I look forward to, and I do sincerely hope that you reach out so that we can discuss that sooner than not, to make sure we're on the same page, if in fact you are interested in pursuing that petition again during the upcoming election cycle. But thank you for your involvement and in comments today. Is anyone else in Las Vegas interested in providing public comment on any items not on the agenda? Seeing none, broadcasting, would you please check the phones?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Oscar Williams again. I want to just explain an experience I've been having with Washoe County, and this is in regards to the county's organizational chart and a consultant that the county's hired to review it and make recommendations regarding the role of the county manager and so on and so forth, called the Raftellus Consulting Group. I made 2 public comments to the County Board of Commissioners and 1 written comment. And to make it simple, and this affects the Office of Registrar of Voters and the clerk and others. So what you have in the current chart is on the top, are the Board of Commissioners. And then underneath that is the manager. And everything else flows underneath the manager and the assistant managers, whether it be the register of voters, the clerk, the DA's office, the sheriff. They're all having to go through the manager in terms of communication and lines of authority, communicate with the board of directors, commissioners. And I take issue with that. For example, it's the clerk who signs the certificates of election. You would think that there'd be some direct lines of communication between that agency and the register of voters, but there is not. There's no lines of communication at all. The register of voters serves solely the pleasure of the Board of Commissioners per county statute. The county hires and fires them, sets their compensation. They certify the canvas of the elections that the registrar gives them, and yet there's no direct line of communication under the county's organizational chart. But I think it's even more glaring when you look at the elected offices of the clerk, the DA, and the sheriff. There's no way that those agencies have to go through the manager. They're elected officers. Their duty is to the people, not to the manager. And so the chart just needs to be changed. And I'm offering this to you because it affects the offices of elections in Washoe County and in Clark County, potentially. I'm sure they've got the same problem. And what I would recommend is maybe on the left side, you would have the clerk and the administrative courts. And on the right, you have your DA, your sheriff, and your criminal courts. And the register of voters would be up underneath somewhere next to the clerk, I think, close to the board. And then in the middle is the manager with different lines and dotted lines and so on and so forth. And that way, I think it would better serve the community and give the register of voters a level of autonomy to do the job that they want to do, not what the manager tells them to do. It's the board that is their manager. The registrar's duty is to the board, but that's not reflected in the organizational chart. I just wanted to bring that to your attention, sir. It's an issue. I think it really needs to be solved because, again, the office of registrar of voters seems to be somewhat compromised in his duty to the Board of Commissioners and their constituents. So we, imagine at one point the legislator, I think it was in the 70s, passed a law that allowed Clark County and Washoe County to create the Office of Registrar of Voters. In so doing, they allowed the Board of Commissioners to usurp the authority of the clerk who handles elections and then assign it to their appointee, their hire, the Registrar of Voters. It's quite the power grab, but the trade-off in the contract with the electorate, we have the security of having an elected official having oversight of the Registrar of Voters. But the way the org chart is written, it cuts that tenuous, what would you call it, relationship to elections and elected official oversight, and it's clouded by the intrusion of the manager, the way our organizational chart is drafted. So I hope that that can be corrected, and maybe you would even have an opinion on it you can share with the county. That might be welcome. I hope that you would side with me in defending the Office of Registrar of Voters and properly aligning it in balance to the manager and the other elected officers and what it all means in terms of how our county runs. Thank you very much. That's all I have. Again, thank you for holding these hearings so much. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Williams.
Hello, this is Ellen Gifford again. As mentioned before this week, a Nevada voter curious about what prompted the need for the law NRS 293705 employed the Freedom of Information Act, sending a letter to the Secretary of State asking for any records that document incidences such as those listed in that statute. 2 years is a long time to wait for a proper response for public records access. I hope this can be addressed soon. And thank you to all three of you for being there for us and for this opportunity for the public to work with your office. It is very, very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Gifford.
Chair, there are no other callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
Excellent. Thank you, Broadcasting. At this time, I'll close the final public comment on matters other than the Elections Procedure Manual. Before we adjourn, though, I do have maybe three last things. First and foremost, as a reminder to everyone, we anticipate bringing the Elections Procedure Manual to the Legislative Commission. We've gotten questions about what exactly the Legislative Commission is, so I want to clarify that the members of the Legislative Commission are 12 elected members of the State Senate and Assembly. The Legislative Commission has a website on the state legislative page that lists the members so that you can get in touch with them if you have questions or comments, as well as listing the agenda, the agendas and other information relating to their meetings. We anticipate bringing the procedure manual to the Wednesday, December 17th meeting at 1 p.m. Again, from this point forward, so that you understand the feedback that we receive from the public, we will take back, review that. When there's questions, we will reach out to, again, the clerks as appropriate, ultimately making recommendations to the secretary, and then we will amend the Elections Procedure Manual to bring to the Legislative Commission. Again, as long as there's not substantive changes, we are able to make changes going forward. One of those specifically that I'd like to highlight is the inclusion of citations. Just about every page will need somewhere between 5 and 50 additional citations. That will take some time, but again, those are not the sort of changes that have to necessarily happen before December 17th, but that we will continue to work on in the year ahead to make sure that it continues to get updated. But again, December 17th, 1 p.m., we'll go to the Legislative Commission. So if you have any interest in talking or providing feedback at that time, we certainly encourage it. Second, I want to thank everybody that was involved in these meetings from the members of the public. Again, when Secretary Aguilar asked for us to make public comment or receive public comment on the procedure manual, again, this ties in very much with his initiative and push for increased transparency. You'll have noticed in the statute that I've now read 3 times, it doesn't say we have to do this, but it absolutely is the right answer. And I very much appreciate you all taking time and effort to not only review the document, but to let us know. We'll continue to solicit your feedback going forward, both through the formal form as well as, again, emails or calls to the Elections Division here in Carson City. And then lastly, I owe a tremendous debt of thanks to Miss Heather Hardy, who for the last few years has been working tirelessly on this document. When I come into work early in the morning, her light is already on, and she has been grinding away to make sure that this document is as good as it can be to support the information that for you all, again, the electorate, the press, and election officials across the state. If you've ever had to write a book or work on a lengthy document, it's not fun. It can be very taxing, but she has done just an exceptional job working on it and gathering other members from the Elections Division to make sure that this work it continues as needed. Knowledge is power, but it's only powerful when you share it, and the goal is to make sure that the entirety of our state, the electorate, and citizens and otherwise can understand how our elections function, as they are such a critical piece. So, Heather, truly appreciate your work. It has not gone unnoticed. That being said, appreciate everyone else's time and involvement. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.